everyone, welcome to another Overrated Film Saturday, and today I'm going to be discussing the Spider-Man series. And when I'm talking about the Spider-Man series, I mean the first two films that came out that were trying to capture the essence of Spider-Man. So, Tobey Maguire movies 1 and 2. And although I think they did definitely provided some good elements to them as far as introducing Spider-Man and seeing him on the big screen. And I think a lot of people definitely, I could see why they would get excited for a character like this because we haven't seen him before, usually on the big screen at least. We've seen him in television, but not so much within the live action format. And I think a lot of people, since they've seen tons and tons of recreations of Spider-Man and Superman and Batman, Spider-Man was kind of a new thing, and I think a lot of people really thought that this was a good approach and a good, I would even say, marketing strategy because it was a new superhero. Now, despite it kind of breaking the mold for Spider-Man, I think unfortunately the first two films really do fall flat as far as being really solid superhero movies. They're not horrible by any stretch of the imagination, and they are no way in shape or form as bad as the third film. And I kind of talked about the third film a while back, and you can kind of see my rants on that if you go through my history of video making. But with these two, within the starting of the Spider-Man series, there is a sense of wanting to do things new and creative and then having certain things kind of fall flat and then doing things that are very hokey and bizarre. And then there's all these little corny moments in there. So there's just a lot that makes it not as, I think, memorable or as iconic as some other superhero material. Now, what I think makes them a little bit, again, not as memorable or as well thought out is, although they offer some interesting stories and looks into various different villains and characters that are involved with Spider-Man's life, it seems like the people who are playing the characters and the way in which the dialogue is presented and just the way the plot is all put together, it just doesn't give you that, I think, really in-depth emotional investment that other superhero films provide, because again, there is a lot of awkward moments, especially when you look at the villains in particular. The Green Goblin in the first film, where he is just so unbelievably over the top, and you understand that a film like that would be a little bit kooky and crazy, but I think there was a way of doing it to not make you kind of laugh at it. And, it would be kind of like if the Joker started like doing something completely and utterly ridiculous and just trying to act over the top in a non-Joker-like way. And I think here it's definitely safe to say, with the way they approached the Green Goblin being the villain in the first film, you can definitely see how they just kind of go a little bit over the edge. And I think Tobey Maguire, although I don't think he is a terrible Spider-Man by any stretch of the imagination, I still think he is a little bit, he just underperforms as far as an actor, I think, is concerned, and for a role like Spider-Man. Yeah, you get the sense of him trying to be innocent and whatnot, and you get a real kind of geeky version of Spider-Man that you come to expect But at the same time, there's just a lot of strange moments and moments where you feel like he is, again, overperforming himself, like, and just being kind of more of a kid and not so much of a teenager, he just comes off as he just has this really kind of just, very, he just doesn't really act like a teenager to me. He just kind of acts more like a kid that hasn't been in even the teenage steps yet. Because I don't know, he just comes off as very, I think it's because of the innocence factor to him, and how they try to make him all kind of dorky. And again, it's almost on the side of being too dorky, too innocent, too playful, whatnot. That I think is what makes him not as enjoyable or entertaining to watch. And again, I don't think completely captures the essence so much of Spider-Man, because Spider-Man, especially within the TV show, was always very snarky, and he kind of had sort of an edge to him. And I felt like with Tobey Maguire's interpretation, you kind of get a sense of him being more phoned in, and I think that leads to him being more like a Superman, so to speak, like he's perfect and can do no wrong and is completely innocent and free from fault. And although they do make Peter Parker's character go through various struggles within the first two films, there is a point to where certain plot points border on the lines of being cliche. There's no really development with the girlfriend, Mary Jane, and she definitely is not one of the more interesting characters, which I think that they definitely should have put in some effort into making her an interesting character, which they unfortunately don't. And their whole love story within the series of Spider-Man films really doesn't make any sense. Again, even within the first and the second film, you kind of think like, was this really a relationship that was meant to be? Because they're pretty much not together throughout the majority of it. So again, you don't really get a sense of their relationship or anything. You just kind of get a sense of, them wanting to be together, but not really actually being together. So it's, again, it just doesn't give you a full context into things, unfortunately, sometimes. So again, I am not saying that these films were horrible or didn't have any good aspects to them. I think there were some things that they tried to do right with this first series of Spider-Man films. Unfortunately, a lot of that fell flat, and eventually, some new problems eventually surfaced from the new Spider-Man films. But I don't think the new series of Spider-Man films reached the same amount of caliber of interest as the first installment of these series of films involving the superhero Spider-Man did. Because again, it really was a time for people to get invested into these kinds of films. And to see new superheroes, and Spider-Man was a very popular superhero, and so it's definitely safe to say why they made them. But I think they unfortunately lack in some departments, like I've mentioned, and I think they could have definitely been improved upon. But it's not to say they were horrible. I just don't think they were as grand or as spectacular as some people have claimed them to be. But I think that's really all I can say about them. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care.